My kids now understand that this is a fact of life in Seattle. This crime, these vagrants, the homeless crisis, the drug addicts. And oftentimes we'll make comments. We'll walk into an REI. They see a tent sitting there and they go, "Oh, look, somebody's camped out in the store. I wonder if it's one of the homeless people." Being on the cemetery board is one of the easiest boards I'm on because there's really not that much to do. The thing has been running itself for 130 years thanks to the dedicated professionals who work as the undertakers and the grave diggers and the groundskeepers. And for us, it's more of a supervisory role to make sure that everything's running okay, which is why I was so surprised in April when I got a call, "Hey, Ari, we're having these problems. Can you come help us?" What had happened was the RVs, which are occupied by the drug addicts and the pimps and the drug dealers that have infested our city, had moved in at the edges of our cemetery. Prostitutes had begun working the woods at the cemetery. Drug dealers had begun working the woods at our cemetery, and the thing was out of control. The situation was out of control and was spiraling worse and worse. I contacted many city officials, and nothing came of it. My wife's family is buried at that cemetery. Former students of mine are buried at that cemetery. I take this very personally. We may have to sue the city of Seattle because the damage to the cemetery has been in excess of $250,000. The international media has picked up the story of what's going on at the cemeteries. The synagogue and myself get phone calls from people who say, "Is my relative's grave okay?" I had a family from Alaska who lost a son at the age of 16, and they had to call me to ask if their son's grave was undisturbed. Families shouldn't have to make phone calls like that because of negligence of city officials. This, however, wasn't the first time I had been aware of the vagrant issue in Seattle. Several years ago, the Seattle City Council had the brilliant idea of allowing homeless people to camp in the local neighborhood parks, the places where I coach baseball, the places where my children play. Every time I coach baseball, I have to spend at least an hour before the game raking the field and cleaning up the field. Now I have to clean it up from feces, from needles. I have to make sure that there are no vagrants in the bathrooms on the field because oftentimes we find people still sleeping or camping in the public parks. These people need our help. Some are mentally ill. Some are drug addicted. They need our help and they're not getting the help. They don't realize that every time they do sweeps, they find children in these homeless encampments. They find children who are being trafficked. They find children of drug addicted parents or mentally ill parents. Children who could be in school. Children who aren't getting the resources or the medical care that they need. The sweeps are compassionate because they're helping to solve that problem, but we could be doing better. Nobody should have to sleep on the streets at night. To ensure safety in Seattle, there's a few things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is to enforce our own laws. We have so many laws on the books that are not being enforced right now. We also need to be doing warrant checks because there are a lot of people who have outstanding warrants on them who are living here because they know they'll be caught anywhere else. They call it free-addle. We need to get the people who are drug addicted into treatment. We need to get the people who have alcohol addiction into treatment. And we need to get the mentally ill the services that they need so that they don't have to sleep on the streets at night. We need to get children off the streets. But it all comes down to starting by enforcing the rules we already have, which was forgotten by our city officials a long, long time ago. I met with Councilmember Mike O'Brien and Councilmember Tim Burgess, who at the time was about to become mayor. What happened was Mike O'Brien said one of the most outrageous things to me in this entire process. I met with Mike O'Brien on the day of the 2016 election. It just happened to fall out that way. Mike O'Brien said to me, and this is a direct quote, he said, "Well, hopefully the results of the election today, knock on wood, will be what we want them to be, and we will have all the money we need to deal with this problem." I discussed with him, and I said to him that we've thrown tons of money at this problem already, and it hasn't solved anything. Perhaps we need new ideas. He was not very receptive. My meeting with Tim Burgess, I even proposed to him a plan I had come up with to turn dilapidated warehouses and other properties in Seattle into homeless shelters. It was rejected, and this was the most outrageous thing I'd ever heard, by a city official, because he said they couldn't change the zoning on these warehouses, and therefore they couldn't do it. So please explain to me how the Seattle City Council could change the zoning to save the showbox, but isn't able to save people's lives.